Hello and welcome to Nano Day. This day is a celebration of all things nanotechnology. My name is James Marty. I work with the Minnesota Nano Center here at the University of Minnesota. I'm joined by my colleagues, Samson Allende from the NSF Center for Sustainable Polymers and Miriam Krause from the NSF Center for Sustainable Nanotechnology, all of which are here at the U of M. Today we are talking about Nano Day, which is customarily celebrated on October 9th, which pays homage to the nanometer length scale, 10 to the minus 9 meters. But really, nanotechnology can be celebrated at any time during the year because we are trying to raise awareness of nanotechnology and how it is currently used in products that are rich our daily lives. We also want to cover some of the challenges and opportunities it holds for the future. So thank you for joining us. This webinar will feature a general introduction to the field of nanotechnology, a description of what we can do with it, as well as some of the challenges posed by nanotech, a discussion of ways that we can make this technology safer and more sustainable, and also give you a few ways to learn more about the subject of nanoscience and nanotechnology. As I mentioned, I'm with the Minnesota Nano Center, which is the central university laboratory that supports research into nanoscience and nanoscale technology. And this kind of breaks out into prominently micro and nanoelectronics, where we have large clean rooms where we assemble small-scale devices. Also devices for optics and for biosensing can be done in our facility. We work with nanoparticles and nanomaterials, which have many different types of applications, and also do some exploration into the biological applications of nano. So I'd like to first introduce what nanotechnology is, give us some definitions. A common definition of nanotechnology is making something useful, a material or a device, that has some key component at the nanoscale. Well, what is a nanoscale? Nanoscale refers to anything that has a size at or below about 100 nanometers. It could be the size of the object, or it could be some key component inside the object, but what is making it work is it at or below 100 nanometers. Okay, well, what's a nanometer? Nanometer is an extremely small length scale. It's really below our normal everyday experience of life. So to get a better feel for what the nanometer length scale is, I've got a powers of 10 exercise that I'd like to walk you through. I'm going to present a series of photos. Each one is zoomed in by a factor of 10 from its predecessor. And so the picture on the left-hand side is a macroscopic image, one that we may find out in our backyards. A fly sitting on a leaf. Now the width of that picture is about 10 centimeters or 100 millimeters wide. A millimeter is about the thickness of a coin. 100 millimeters is easily addressable to or accessible to our regular senses. If we zoom in by a factor of 10, that middle photo is 10 millimeters wide, and it shows some additional detail on the body of the fly and on the leaf. If we zoom in by another factor of 10, now that image is only 1 millimeter wide. And at this length scale, we begin to see the details of the fly's eye, particularly the facets that make up the eye. That 1 millimeter wide photo is also equivalent to 1,000 micrometers. That's what the Greek symbol mu means, 1,000 micrometers. If we zoom in by a factor of 10, the picture on the left is 100 micrometers wide. At this scale, we begin to see some of the finer structure of the fly's eye. And at this length scale, we also encounter some common powders that you may find in the kitchen, like salt or sugar or ground up flour. In addition, the human hair is about 60 to 100 microns or micrometers thick, typically. So this size scale is still amenable to our senses, but if we zoom in by another factor of 10, that middle photo is only 10 micrometers wide. 10 micrometers is usually too small for most people to see directly without the aid of a microscope or a magnifying glass. At 10 microns, we start to see, we can see the sensory organ that is at the vertices of the fly's, the aspects, the facets of the fly's eye. At 10 microns, we also encounter things like the single cells in our body. For instance, red blood cells are typically 6 to 8, perhaps a little bit larger microns in size. It's also the size scale of the suspended particles from plants called pollen that cause many of us our allergies in the spring and the fall. If we zoom in by another factor of 10, the photo in the lower right is a 1 micron wide. At this size scale, we start to encounter bacteria, also the ground up colored particles that give anything colored its color, like inks or pigments or colored plastic articles. These pigment particles are typically ground down from larger material to about 1 micron in size. Now, this is all above the nanoscale. 1 micrometer is equivalent to 1,000 nanometers. To become truly nano, we need to zoom in by another factor of 10. And the upper left photo is of 100 nanometers wide. It's been taken with a scanning electron microscope, and it shows the protein bundles that form that sensory organ in the fly's eye. 100 nanometers is also roughly the size range where we encounter viruses. The coronavirus in particular, also cold viruses, flu viruses, they're all about 80 to 100 nanometers in size. So they're much, much smaller than cells, which is one reason why they so can easily get into cells. Also, 100 nanometers or less is the size of the transistors that form integrated circuits that power all of our electronic devices today. We'll have more to talk about that in a minute. We can zoom in by another factor of 10. At 10 nanometers, we encounter large organic molecules, such as those that make up plastics and polymers, and in particular, the DNA molecule, which is the foundation for all life on Earth, that is on the order of 10 nanometers in size. Zoom in by another factor of 10, we are down at 1 nanometer length scale. At 1 nanometer, you're looking at small organic molecules, such as that image of the glucose molecule, a sugar molecule, that's roughly a few nanometers in size. And going even down farther, a single water molecule stands at a half a nanometer in size. So this nanometer length scale is well smaller than we are typically used to dealing with in our macroscopic world. Nanotechnology, then, is understanding matter at these small scales between 100 and 1 nanometers and being able to control matter and make things that are useful. Now, why are we interested in trying to do this? It turns out that at the nanometer size scale, there are unique phenomena that arise, that occur, and they enable certain types of novel applications. So let's explore those next. What is so special about nano, and why should we care? For one thing, nanoparticles allow us to directly interact with the cells that make up living things. As I mentioned, viruses are able to get into cells and interfere with their genetic machinery because they are so small. They can kind of slip through the cell membranes. And as a result, we can do the same thing. If we engineer nanoparticles that can deliver drugs or deliver beneficial material into a cell, it too will follow this same course and be able to, we can directly manipulate cells. Another example of where nano is important would be if we'd like to try to tap into the nerve cells, say, of a patient that's received an artificial limb. We would like to be able to have that patient directly control this artificial limb using their natural nerves. Well, we need to connect the prosthetic device to the natural nerves. To do that, we need to address individual nerve cells which require extremely fine leads or wires. So nanoscale wires are being explored to allow us to directly connect patients in need of prosthetic devices. Another promise of nanotechnology is that if we can build things by manipulating matter on the atomic scale, in theory, we could build things with extremely high precision, much less energy, and potentially no waste material. So this has not been realized yet, but this is something that nanotechnology promises for the future. And going back to the present, however, many products are already manufactured using practical nanotechnology. Chief among those is all manner of electronics. All the electronics that we can currently use, including laptops and cell phones, are based on a nanotechnology manufacturing scheme. In addition, nanomaterials like nanoparticles are used in a wide variety of consumer products like drugs, like personal care products, foods, as well as pharmaceuticals. So nanotechnology is widespread and already found in many of the products that we enjoy today. If we think about electronics, this is probably the major use for nanotechnology today. Every device that can be called electronic, and there's a wide variety of them, are all based on kind of a common architecture that's depicted in the lower left photo. That's a circuit board, and on that circuit board is the black box or several black boxes with pins on it. These are integrated circuits. Integrated circuits can be explained as having all of the components necessary to make the circuit work in a tiny, tiny area. Here I've got a photo of an integrated circuit that shows that most of the black boxes that you find on that circuit board It's mostly empty space. The actual components that make the circuit work are found in that small little green square of silicon that contains all the transistors, the resistors, capacitors, wires, and everything else required to make the circuit function. If we zoom in by a high degree of magnification, we start to see what it looks like, what actually makes up an integrated circuit. On the right-hand side, you'll see a lot of structures that look like lines or things that were kind of carved out of sandstone. Those are actually integrated transistors and resistors and so forth that have been made from a single slab of silicon. That big cylinder in the left-hand side of the image is a single human hair shaft. So it gives you an idea of how small we were able to make all the transistors that form the electric circuits. It's this technology that enables us to have very powerful, lightweight, low-power electronic devices such as cell phones, laptops, that enable us to enjoy all the benefits of this technology. Nanoparticles are commonly found in many consumer products. As I mentioned, particles are found in cosmetics and personal care items, things for skin and hair formulations. Sunscreens oftentimes use nanoparticle zinc oxide or another ceramic called titanium dioxide. These help to scatter off ultraviolet radiation and protect our skin from sunburn. Nanoparticle silver is commonly used as an antimicrobial in wound dressings and sometimes as a supplement even. Even beer bottles get into the act. Sometimes manufacturers want to use plastic beer bottles, and they do a poor job of keeping the carbon dioxide gas charge inside the bottle. So sometimes nanoparticle clays are used to seal up these plastic bottles. Another use of nanoparticle materials is nanocarbon. Nanoparticle carbon materials are used to strengthen polymers and parts for sporting equipment, bicycles, and so forth. Nanoparticle carbon is also being used to improve the output and performance of batteries. And this is a very, very active area of research with the advent of the electric vehicle revolution. Nanoparticles, or nanotechnology in general, is also found in the life science applications. For instance, nanoparticles can be used to improve medical imaging and also to deliver drugs to patients in a more safe fashion. Nano and microstructured electronics can be used for all kinds of medical devices, biosensors, monitors that the patients can wear, cardiovascular pacing that may be implanted in the patient, many different applications in the life sciences. In particular, using nanoparticles to deliver drugs is an exciting frontier in medicine. By placing drug molecules on the outside of a nanoparticle, along with a molecule that may be like a protein that will target this particle to a certain type of tissue, we can more effectively deliver pharmaceutical or drug molecules right to the tissue that needs this treatment and avoid flooding the patient's body with high levels of potentially harmful pharmaceuticals. So this is an exciting new area of nanomedicine. Related to that, we can deliver not just drug molecules, but we can also deliver genetic material inside cells with nanoparticles. And this is an example of some work that was done here at the University of Minnesota several years ago. At the time it was done, it was pretty cutting edge. Now this technique is used commonly for vaccines, in particular the coronavirus vaccine developed by Moderna and Pfizer, BioNTech. They use nanoparticles that encapsulate genetic material that replicates something about the SARS virus. And these small nanoparticles can get inside cells where the cells react with an immune response and thereby achieve a vaccination for the patient. Another exciting way to use nanoparticles in medical therapies is so-called thermal therapy. Here we need to destroy tissue that may be cancerous or needs to be removed, but if the tissue is difficult to reach by conventional surgical techniques, one can take a nanoparticle, usually of an iron oxide material, coat it with the right molecules, the right proteins so that it will stick to the tissues we want it to, and then inject it into the patient. Once the particles are at the tissue that needs to be removed, the patient is then exposed to radio frequency energy, radio waves. These radio waves are absorbed by the iron oxide particle, which then gets hot and then proceeds to disrupt the cell. It literally can blow the cell up or remove the cancerous or the tumorous tissue. So this is an exciting application, again, of nanotechnology to medicine. To learn more about other applications, please visit our website. We have lists of recent research that's been done by the faculty and researchers that use our facility, as well as nanotechnology news and a number of resources for classroom teachers about nanoscience and nanotechnology. So far I've spoken mostly about the promises and the opportunities presented by nanotechnology. But it should be noted that nanotechnology does not come without challenges. And several come to mind. For instance, if we're making products with nanoparticles, what happens when they get thrown away, thrown in a landfill or incinerated? What's the environmental fate of these materials? Can they maybe be made safe? At the other end of the product life cycle, is it safe to work with these in a manufacturing environment? Do workers need to take particular measures to protect themselves against exposure to nanoparticles or nanomaterials? In addition, there's always the problem of if you make something in the laboratory, you can see that it's safe, but can you prove it's safe for mass consumption or production on a massive scale? These are a number, and these and other challenges will be addressed by our next speaker, Samson Alyande. So thank you very much, and we hope that you enjoy Nano Day.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure again to join you today on sustainable nanotechnology, promises and challenges, what I'll be talking about. My name is Samson Oluwabumiga. I'm a visiting professor at Department of Chemistry, University of Minnesota. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Miriam, for this opportunity. Yeah, sustainable nanotechnology, before now, there has been a lot of worries as regards the safety of nanotechnology. Majorly, the worries has to do with some of the impact on human, and the worry is also associated with some of those negative impact that results into several diseases, several medical and health challenges as a result of exposure, injection, inhalation of nanomaterial, and some of it that get into the human through the ecosystem as negatively affected. So this has led to a lot of concern on the safety of nanomaterial. But in the midst of these, since 1917 up to now, there has been over 600 applications which are based on new drugs that are involving nanomaterials, particularly in coming up with new therapy system, coming up with new procedure. Of course, these nanomaterials have led to various inventions and innovation in the area of pharmaceutical and several other sectors. Now, looking at the tree of nanotechnology, you can see nanotechnology being applicable to various sectors. The list is endless, and the branches keep growing. So, which means in the next decade, the branches will be too numerous to be counted. So this has led to another rethink to look at nanotechnology from the dimension of creating a world that is sustainable, sprouting development in various sectors in a sustainable way without or minimal negative impact to both the ecosystem and human. So that has been priority, and that is the dimension in which nanotechnology is driven towards sustainability. So sustainable nanotechnology has been defined by the American Chemical Society. It is defined as the research and development of nanomaterial that have economic and societal benefit with little or no negative societal impact, environmental impact. The successful application is contingent upon scientific excellence, which provide economic, ethical, and societal benefits. So this has been a major concern, and this is a priority in considering the numerous applications of nanomaterial and the importance to development of every sector. So notable quotes, one of the notable quotes of sustainability looks at, says, I don't want to protect the environment, I want to create a world where environment does not need protection. And that is very applicable to sustainable nanotechnology. So within the United States, there has been several organizations, several efforts gearing towards sustainability in nanotechnology. And one of the major efforts is the NRF Center for Sustainable Nanotechnology. Later, Miriam will be talking to us on some of the activity of NRF on the dimension of sustainability. So again, there's an NGO, Sustainable Nanotechnology Organization. There's Virginia Tech Center for Sustainable Nanotechnology, Center for Nanotechnology and Nanotoxicology. So these are various organizations where that mandates are related on sustainable nanotechnology within the United States. So the concept of sustainability in nanotechnology has given rise to the concept of green nanomaterial, in which the major priority, the major focus is looking at environmental sustainability in a cost-oriented approach, but most importantly, minimum hazard. It's also geared towards minimum environmental and health risk. Of course, and this is very critical in view of many of the worries that has been reported on conventional procedure for synthesis or development of nanomaterial. So again, because of this sustainability approach, of course, it's becoming a global attention now in view of all major concern to conserve the environment and also to minimize negative exposure to women. So again, some of the several methods which has come under this concept has been adjudged to be eco-friendly, non-toxic, affordable, fast, safe, and also abundant. And more importantly, these approaches are in tandem with the 12th principle of green chemistry, which talks about environmental prevention of environmental pollution, atomic economy, less hazardous chemical synthesis. We also talk about design of safer chemicals, safe of solvent and auxiliary, and on up to the fire that we are looking at a safer chemistry for accident prevention. So several synthetic routes are now evolving for synthesis of nanomaterial with little or no negative impact to human and the entire ecosystem. And one of it now is the mechanochemistry concept. And of course, this has to do with the use of mechanical force to break and initiate new chemical bond. Of course, with this approach comes with very reduction in solvent usage, and in some cases there is no solvent. So you are eliminating some of the hazard that may arise as a result of toxic solvent. So these has also been reported, and of course this is a benign process because you have eliminated a lot of exposure to solvent, and this has also resulted into several products in ceramic, polymer, metal organic framework, and several organic compounds. The use of microwave radiation, of course, this also has to do with application of electromagnetic radiation as an alternative to traditional convective heating. Of course, in this you are looking at uniform heating. You are looking at rapid and uniform heating, or in dielectric solvent is achieved with this. This is also a benign process, which in this process, a lot of this process is in tandem with principle of green chemistry. There's uniformity in many of the nanomaterial that have been synthesized using this concept, uniform size, and this has resulted into many nanoparticles, meta-organic framework, and organic compounds. The concept of photochemistry and photocatalysis it relies on the use of radiation, invisible, and UV spectrum to activate, to initiate chemical reaction. This comes with low carbon print because you are using solar, so there's low carbon print. So this, of course, is very key in global drive towards climate change. So this has resulted into this inorganic compound in many nanoparticles. We also have the concept of electrochemistry and electrocatalysis. In this case, you are looking at the use of electricity to make and break chemical bond. Of course, this has also resulted in excellent uniformity in nanomaterials and their sizes and their morphologies. Of course, this is very key in the drive towards sustainability because with this concept, you are looking at very safe process, and it's a benign process. So these are resulted in many organic compound, many inorganic and ceramic and organic compound. We also have the concept of flow chemistry. In flow chemistry, you are looking at the concept of using a microreactor instead of a batch process. So you are looking at the concept of energy conservation. You are looking at the concept of using a very small recycling of your solvent and using a very small amount of solvent and reagent in view of batch process, whereby for every batch you discard the solvent, you discard the reagent. So these permit the recycling of solvent and reagent. So this is in line with conservation, and this is also very benign process. So this has resulted in several organic compound and colloidal nanoparticles. Yeah, some of the recent development has also resulted into biological synthesis. We have plant derivatives of phytocompounds from plant, organisms, and microbes are used as to initiate bioreduction in nanomaterials. And this has also been classified as, because with these, there's minimum use of chemicals. So you are relying on processes that are initiated from biological substances. This is also safe and benign process. So this has resulted into several products, particularly meta nanoparticles. So again, apart from the concept of synthesis, the concept of life cycle of assessment of nanomaterial has also come to play to provide understanding of what happened, not just from the design perspective, but to guide researcher to have an understanding of what happened from design to usage and to large-scale production to disposal. So this provides a lot of guide and several efforts in this direction to understand what happened from the cradles to gate, what happened from the cradles to usage, and from the cradles to the grave, and from the cradles to the to cradle. Now, basically, you are looking at from the cradles to the gate. You are looking at what happened from the synthesis, that is from the laboratory perspective. So in the laboratory, you are looking at, okay, well, during the course of the synthesis, what are the hazards associated with some of my solvents, some of my chemicals, and that you are looking at exposure to the researcher, to the environment, and ability to identify that, then mitigation will be much easier. Then again, after that, you are also looking at what happened from the design now to manufacturing, from sourcing of the raw materials, where will the raw materials be sourced, what are the positive and the negative impact on both human and the ecosystem, entire ecosystem, at the point of manufacturing. Then at the point of usage as well, that's from the cradles to usage. When my substance, when it's exposed to photon, what happened? Their byproducts, is it stable, and what's the shelf life? So we are looking at the byproduct, and what are the negative and the positive impact both to human and the entire ecosystem. You are looking again at the life cycle, even to the point of disposal. So when you dispose the nano-based material, what happened? What's going to happen? Does it degrade? And if it doesn't degrade, does it transform to any other bioproduct? And what's the impact to the ecosystem and again, you are looking at it. Can it be recycled? Can there be reuse? Can there be upcycling? So you are looking at a whole life assessment of these, and some of these this life cycle assessment, it has been, for instance, it has been reported to classify laser technology as a very safe technology for it in the production of nanomaterial. So it's an holistic approach beyond the inventor or beyond the researcher's idea to look at all the phases of the product, and both the negative and the positive impact, and what are the things to do to mitigate, and what are the things to do to ensure minimal. This is geared towards ensuring minimal exposure of human to risk, minimal exposure of the environment to negative hazard. That is why nanomaterials are subjected into life cycle assessment before they have been transformed into products. So looking at the concept of green economic prosperity, we come, according to UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, say green economy is one that results in improved human well-being, social equity, while significantly reducing environmental risk and ecological scarcity. It is low carbon, resource efficient, and socially inclusive. If you look at what green nanotechnology contributes, we look at application in electronics, in cosmetics, in novel catalysis, in energy resources, in pharmaceutical, and so many other in the area of medicine, in the area of membrane, and so many other sectors that are yet to emerge. So this concept again looks at contribution to green economy. So the contribution to the green economy. So nanotechnology contributes significantly to green economy, considering the range of application and considering the effort gearing towards sustainability. So we'll just look at one of few contributions of nanotechnology in the area of green economy. So the first drug that was approved by the FDA here in the United States was in 1995, which was based on nanotechnology. Ever since 1995 up to now, there has been several contributions, and most significantly, we can forget the pandemic that ravaged the world in 29 and a few years back that led to several vaccination that emerged after the COVID-19 pandemic. And now, if you look at the concept of the COVID-19, as many of the vaccines that were developed, we saw nanotechnology playing a key role from serving as nanocarriers to serving as binders. Okay, it's so many of it as or some of it involves nanoparticles, some of it involves carrier for antigen suppression, and some of it has also played, and many of it has passed through several approval and they have been administered. But the truth there is that nanotechnology plays several roles and which led to a combination of many therapy now in the area of medicine. And this has led to development of novel drugs, development of novel therapy techniques. You can see nanotechnology playing key role as there are virus nanoparticles. There are drug conjugates which are based on nanomaterial. There are lipid-based nanocarriers, there are also polymer-based nanocarrier, and each of these results into a new therapy in the area of nanomedicine, resulting in the various mechanisms by which drugs attach to the active specific site or specific disease site or specific use cell in the body. So nanotechnology has given a vast array of treatment therapy, vast array of therapy, alternative therapies in which medicine and specific healing are administered to affected cells in the body. So from 2022, which is the current year, we can see that there are several novel drugs which have been approved. You can go through this link, you see some of the novel drugs, and this has also led the FDA to provide a guideline in view of the many emerging development trends, in view of many emerging development arising from nanotechnology. So this has led to provision of guideline on the use of nano materials and drugs that contains nano materials. So again, a very prominent sector is the area of cosmetics. If we look at the first and the second sector, cosmetics, I mean, all of us, we have been one way or the other, we are directly affected by nanomedicine, one way or the other, we're also affected by cosmetics. So, of course, because of direct impact on human, so nano sustainability is highly driven in many of these areas. And if we look at number of patents that has evolved from 2000 and in 2012 alone, we can see many of the major giant industry coming up with several patents in the area of cosmetics based on nano concept. These are nano-related patents from the top 10 beauty company in 2012. And just for us to see 10 years back and to see what has happened over the year. So prominently in that sector, there have been several inorganic substances that have been used in the sector of cosmetics, and ranging from silver nanoparticle to tin. Silver has a very prominent antimicrobial property, and to titanium dioxide, zinc oxide, gold, and copper all have been found application in the area of cosmetics, and ranging from antimicrobial to anti-shield and to anti-shield application in several cosmetics. So several cosmetics products which are based on nanomaterials and nano concept has been developed. You can see several products from wet leaves, to cream, to soap, to laundry, to several products which are regularly being used in form of one cosmetics or the other. So these are, these are based on nano concept. These are based on several derivatives of nanomaterials, from polymer to silica, to nanoparticles, and to various blend of composite nanomaterials. They have found their application in the area of cosmetics, and these has been classified as a viable sector where nanotechnology have been applied a lot. So looking at having looked at contribution of nanotechnology to a green economy, what is the challenge? What are the challenges of sustainable nanotechnology, particularly looking at the way forward to look at a sector whereby rather than having worries or concern about nanotechnology, we'll all agree and we'll all be able to adjudge nanotechnology has been safe and has been a process that we should all embrace. No, the first challenge that we'll look at is the concept of the old culture mindset, in which some of the researchers, in which some of the inventors, in which at the concept design, there's no prominency, there's no priority placed on sustainability. So when the priority is just product driven, without looking at what my process is my process doesn't have any negative impact on human and the entire ecosystem, then we have a lot of product that will not be able to pass from the lab to scale up stage. So at this stage, it is critical that while design is going on, it's also very prominent and very critical to pay attention of some of the hazards that may arise along the way. Again, our product before life cycle assessment. No, this has led to a lot of failed products that have not been able to that were not approved by regulatory bodies, because after development of investing so much to develop product, only for you to find out that it failed several life cycle assessment, the investment will not be justified, and therefore it is important that before there's a scale up, it's important to conduct a life cycle assessment, to know some of the negative impact, and to look at ways of mitigation, and this would be geared towards sustainable nanotechnology. Again, we also have low industrial synergy with academia. For us to be able to drive towards sustainability, there must be an integrated approach in which not only the researcher conceive, but the industry brings in some of the challenges which has caused setback with public acceptance of some of their product, or some of the negative impacts back to the researcher. And from this, researcher takes it up, and there must be very strong synergy in order for us to be able to drive towards a sustainable nanotechnology phase. Well, looking at the National Nanotechnology Initiative Strategy of 2021, we can see that many plans were highlighted, and the National Nanotechnology Initiative Strategy of the United States did place priority on nanotechnology and recognize nanotechnology as a driver of technology, driver of innovation, and United States, of course, plays a leading role in the area of nanotechnology. But however, from the plan, there is no specific priority placed on sustainable nanotechnology. And what is being prioritized in the strategy is responsible nanomaterial that are responsible. Well, the definition of responsibility is ambiguous and it varies from individual to individual. So, but what is prominent there is that why the action plans and why the strategy did recognize the role of nanotechnology for development. It is very critical that the plan should clearly state priority on sustainable nanotechnology. This will guide and this will direct effort of researcher, efforts of policymaker, and even the effort of industry towards investment and towards moving in the area of sustainable nanotechnology. Well, again, we also have the the current level of global commitment and engagement on sustainable nanotechnology as a major challenge because it is difficult for you to work in isolation towards sustainable nanotechnology. It has to be a global commitment. It would be so good if at the level of G8, if at the level of many developed many commissions at the global level, if there are commitments such as on sustainable nanotechnology, then this will bring cooperation, this will bring integration, and this will produce a world that embraces sustainable nanotechnology. Well, nanotechnology is manufacturing with atoms. This is a quote from Williams Powell. So I would like to thank everybody, most especially my colleagues, Jim and Miriam. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Allende. My name is Miriam Kraus, and for my part of our presentation today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about one example of a research center, research collaboration that's working on sustainability and nanotechnology, and that is the NSF Center for Sustainable Nanotechnology. My title is Director of Education, Outreach, and Diversity for the center. So I'm not one of the chemists who's doing the research that I'm going to tell you about, but part of my role is to help the researchers in the center with their professional development and also with sharing their science with the public. So I'm glad to be able to be here today and talk just a little bit about that with you for this sustainable nanotechnology video. So I will switch to sharing just slides. So the CSN isn't what you might think of when you hear the research center. There isn't one building or institute where everybody is working together. We do have 2 faculty here at the University of Minnesota, but we have a dozen other research groups around the U.S. funded by a grant from the National Science Foundation's Chemistry Division with a goal of developing a molecular level understanding of the fundamental chemical and physical processes that govern the transformations and interactions of nanoparticles in the environment. So basically trying to understand what happens when nanoparticles interact with biological systems. We are now in year 8 of a 10-year grant, so there have been literally hundreds of amazing projects and papers exploring the chemistry side of sustainable nanotechnology from our center. As Jim and Samson already alluded to, there are a huge range of materials with various uses, not to mention all the variables within those materials of size, shape, coatings, other factors with every nanoparticle. But I'm going to give you just a little glimpse of a few recent projects within the CSN to just whet your appetite a little bit about sustainable nanotechnology. So a big part of understanding how sustainable nanomaterials are is looking, like I said, at how they interact with biological systems. What effects do they have? To address this kind of question, some CSN researchers use a very common bacteria that's found all over the place in the soil called Shewanella onidensis. And this is a picture of that bacteria. As you heard from the other speakers, there are already tons of nanomaterials being used in all kinds of commercial products out in the world. And in many cases, we know that they are relatively harmless. So for example, research suggests that it is safe for me to put sunscreen on my skin that has titanium dioxide nanoparticles in it. But the CSN has done some research into nanomaterials that are used in things like electric car batteries, and trying to figure out what happens when you have tons of these materials out there in batteries and there's not yet great infrastructure for recycling them. So if large quantities of these nanomaterials ended up coming into contact with organisms in the environment, what can we expect? And we're interested in more than just, do nanoparticles kill it? It turns out in high concentrations they can, and that has to do with the ions that are released by the metal elements in the particles. But it's much more interesting to look at how it affects populations of bacteria that don't die. So this was a study establishing that you can see a delay in how bacteria will grow over time when they've been exposed to some of these common battery materials. Another CSN study later looked at how tuning how much of each kind of battery material, so in this case we have nickel, manganese, and cobalt, how much of each kind of material would change the impacts on the different organisms when you change the proportions. So this is an example where collaboration between experimental chemists and computational chemists in the center is really important, because theory and experiment can feed into each other to predict and test what happens with different amounts of these three metals. The story goes even deeper. What happens to the bacteria that aren't killed off by a nanomaterial that has some toxic properties? As you heard earlier, sometimes we want nanoparticles to kill bacteria, like when they're used in fabrics or hospitals to prevent infection. So it turns out that some bacteria can become resistant to nanoparticle toxicity, and another area of research in the CSN is trying to understand how this resistance works. So this image shows some of those Shigella bacteria that I showed you before, but along with being resistant to harmful effects of those NMC battery materials, they survive that exposure, but they have this elongation effect. And this particular research project was looking at understanding the different roles of the metal ions, the particles themselves, stress on the organisms, trying to understand what's going on across multiple generations of bacteria that show this resistance. Finally, as the theme of our presentation today talks about challenges and promises, I wanted to give you an example of one of the areas of CSN research that has to do with studying how nanomaterials can be helpful for biological systems. So we have a really cool collaboration with the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, looking at how nanoscale materials can help plants get nutrients that they need to fight disease. So this first example was about nanoscale copper helping to suppress a root fungus in watermelon plants. And this second example shows how embedding nanoparticles into biodegradable polymers improves sustainability by reducing waste. So one big problem in agriculture is that you usually have to dump a lot of extra, in this case, phosphorus, in order for the plant to get what it needs. And that excess can get washed off and cause pollution from the runoff. So by embedding this particular nutrient in a biodegradable polymer that would slowly release it on the nanoscale, it actually helps the plants get the nutrients they need, and it uses way less material, and that can help reduce pollution and waste. So again, those are just a few examples of the many scientific projects going on within the NSF Center for Sustainable Nanotechnology. One important part of my job is, as I said, to help the scientists share what they're doing outside the center, beyond the folks who are reading their research articles, and do some outreach with others. So one great way that we do that is through the University of Minnesota's Market Science program, which lets scientists go talk to folks at farmers markets, and it's a super fun way to talk about our science. You can see here a little vial of ferrofluid, which is nanoscale iron oxide particles, and here 3 different sizes of gold nanoparticles that appeared as different colors. And the students in the center in particular really enjoy doing this kind of outreach. But as I mentioned, our center is very geographically spread out around the country. So although we try to take advantage of in-person opportunities like this at our different labs around the country, the main activity we work on together is a blog called Sustainable Nano. And we cover all kinds of topics related to sustainability and nanotechnology. Here's one example post from this summer about nanoplastic pollution in the ocean. Some other posts are more about the experience of being a scientist, like this one, advocating for graduate students to take care of their mental health. Some of our posts are more fun or silly, but still informative, like this one just came out recently, where the students created a BuzzFeed quiz and wrote up a thorough and hilarious personality description that corresponded with 10 different kinds of nanoparticles. And finally, in addition to the blog, we also have the Sustainable Nano podcast, which has been on a bit of a hiatus during the pandemic, but we're working to bring it back here in the fall of 2022. So the big picture is we try to do lots of outreach work to share some of our excitement about nanotechnology, and give a glimpse of what it's like to be a nanoscientist. And we hope that this video has inspired you to want to check out some of our resources and learn more. That brings us to the end of our time. And I want to again thank my colleagues, Dr. Jim Marty from the Minnesota Nano Center and Dr. Samson Allende from the Center for Sustainable Polymers for working on this sustainable nanotechnology presentation together. Here's all of our websites so you can find out more. And thank you for watching.